call the Plan Commission meeting of January 11th to order. Roll call.
Sullivan here.
Lorick here.
Guzikowski here.
Aldana here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
And Mayor Bukewicz, Commissioner Carrillo, and Commissioner Hanna are excused. Item 3, approval of minutes. Everybody take a look at the attached minutes. If there are no changes or corrections, I will look for a motion.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of December 14th, 2021.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call, starting with myself. Lorick, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Aldana, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Moving on, number 4, significant common council actions. Carrie?
Significant common council actions were none for this meeting.
Item number 5, Board of Housing and Zoning Appeal actions. There were also none. Item 6, Quarterly Parks and Recreation Commission actions. The next report for that will be January 25th, 2022. Moving on to old business. 7A, use approval. Review a request submitted by Gary Hintz, Oak Brook Center, to allow manufacturing and alteration of receivers by tenants on the property at 9555 South Howell Avenue. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was held at the December 14th meeting to allow staff to incorporate some of the comments that were received by both the Plan Commission and the applicant to update those conditions of approval. So just to recap, the manufacturing and alteration of firearm receivers by tenants, we talked extensively about the type of activities, the type of machinery that would be used. These are the example part alterations that would be included in that use, and we discussed kind of the molding of these products by using typical consumer products that would be found at kind of the household retail locations. So these are not going to be manufacturing level type of materials that are going to be used or equipment that will be used. So these are all things that would be typically found in your home improvement or your hardware stores or your specialty goods stores, kind of like that. We did have one request. Assistant Chief Havey actually had to step out during the meeting of December 14th. He did have some additional comments to make with regard to fire department requirements. We do have something that is included in the motion, but I'd like to invite Assistant Chief Havey up to kind of express those concerns.
Good evening, Commissioners and Alderman Lorick. The submission that we reviewed really defines welding or hot work. So there is some fire prevention code that we would see that the compliance was in practice with those type of activities. For instance, fire extinguisher specifically designated for that area, and also if there was a fire watch needed, post hot work, things of that nature. If there's any other storage or vessels or flammable materials for that operations, they need to be listed, labeled, and secured. Any other questions?
Any questions?
So the one change to the motion that was not included in the packet is highlighted on the screen. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of the code portion is actually kind of covered up by the screen sharing tab here. But basically what it says is for welding, they would be allowed to use consumer grade equipment in conformance with all fire codes. So we're hoping that gets at all of the requirements for the fire department, but if anything needs to change, now would be the time for anybody to suggest any other language, but this would be kind of your catch-all to ensure that the equipment that's being used is still under the fire code's jurisdiction.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Would he or she like to say anything before we move on to the commission? Okay. Okay, any questions from the commission, starting from my left?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Worked through this a lot.
Oh, no questions.
I'm good.
I do have a question for the applicant.
And if the applicant can just state name and address.
My question is in regards to venting or ventilation for some of these activities. So is there a modified ventilation system that is going in?
There's nothing that's gonna need ventilation. The spot welding is just gonna be done out in the back on the sidewalk for a little bit. It's very minor, too little, and it's done. It's not a major thing at all. And there's nothing else that's gonna require ventilation.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the requirements is that all of the activities have to be within the building. There's nothing that's going to be allowed to be done outside. So if there are going to be fire code requirements for ventilation for those activities, that they would be incorporated in the conditions of approval here. But
Okay, well, we'll have to get with the fire department on that then.
yeah, just ensure that what you're doing meets what their requirements, but that is something that is part of these conditions of approvals, that everything is interior.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I have nothing else to add. As was brought up, we talked about this in detail at the last meeting. Definitely continue to work with the fire department to make sure that the fire codes are all met.
Yeah, I'll talk with him.
So if no other questions, I'll look for a motion.
Hold-
7A.
Oldani moves that the Plan Commission approves the use approval for the manufacturing and alteration of receivers by tenants on the property of 9555 South Howell Avenue, subject to the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements are in effect. 2, that all condition of Resolution 692-010764 and prior approvals for the property remain in effect except for specifically amended herein. 3, that the manufacturing and altercation of firearm receivers is limited to one tenant space within an existing building on the property, and the following. A, etching and/or engraving. The action process or production of words, pictures, or designs by printing from and or onto previously prepared typical commercial parts or products. Etching and/or engraving of parts or products may be conducted by hand or small machine on previously prepared typical commercial parts or products. B, machining, drilling, boring, turning, or forming of typical commercial parts or products utilizing consumer-grade drill press machinery for use on with previous prepared typical commercial parts or products. Excludes general manufacturing and metal fabrication and sale of separate components. C, packaging, enclosing typical commercial parts or products within a container or covering. Excludes the manufacturing of packaging materials. D, surface finishing, the application of a protective coating or of typical commercial parts or products. Application and storage of coating materials shall be fully contained within the building and in conformance with all fire department and inspection department requirements. E, sheet metal forming. Forming of previously prepared typical commercial metal plates utilizing consumer-grade hydraulic press machinery. Excludes general manufacturing and metal fabrication or forming and sale of separate components. F, welding. To unite or repair previously prepared typical commercial parts or products utilizing commercial-grade welding equipment in conformance with all fire codes. G-
One clarification, it's consumer-grade welding equipment.
Okay. As noted. G, assembly, the fitting together of previously prepared packaging, non-hazardous commercial materials, or typical commercial parts or products. Number 4, that the above defined uses shall comply with the performance standards in section 17.0801, 17.0810 as amended. 5, that the above defined uses shall comply with the noise ordinance in section 11.26 as amended. 6, that all waste and recycled materials generated or utilized by the above defined uses shall be disposed of in conformance with all applicable local, state, and federal laws. There shall be no on-site storage of flammable or hazardous materials. 7, All activities associated with the above defined uses shall be fully contained within an existing building on the property not to exceed 1,500 square feet. No new building or additions to existing buildings to accommodate the use are included in this approval. 8, there shall be no outdoor storage or display of materials or merchandise. 9, no sign for the business other than those required by local, state, or federal law shall be allowed. 10, hours of operation shall be limited to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Sunday.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, starting with Alderman Guzekowski.
Guzekowski, aye.
Voldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, no.
Sullivan, aye.
Lorik, aye. Okay, moving on to new business, 8A. 8A is a plan review. Review site building and related plans submitted by Frank Godin, Essentia Architecture LLC, on behalf of Chick-fil-A for a detached canopy over the existing drive-through and an attached canopy on the building on the property at 150 West Town Square Way. Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for Chick-fil-A. This is specifically for 2 canopies, and I apologize. There was a little bit of a confusion whenever I prepared the agenda. The pickup or meal delivery canopy over the existing pickup window is actually on pillars, so it's not attached to the building per se. However, the 2 detached canopies, one is in the drive-through area and the other again is in the pickup area. So we are talking about 2 different areas. The first is over the existing drive-through lanes, and the canopy itself is highlighted in yellow. So we're talking about the north side of the property. And in the blue rectangles on the screen right now, that gives you an idea of what will be seen along Drexel Avenue on the top. And this kind of gives you also a southern elevation as you are going along West Town Square Way on the south. Although this doesn't give you an idea of the distance between the canopy that's on the north side of the property and where you would be seeing it from Town Square Way. It's a little bit of a distance between there. But visually, this is what they are proposing. This is what would be seen from Drexel Avenue. I did not include the elevations in the presentation for what the elevations are when you're entering into the canopy or as you would be traveling eastbound on Drexel Avenue, just because it would be a little bit too difficult to identify in the elevation. So typical kind of metal roof fascia on brick and modular cast stone veneer wrap columns, and those would be to match the building. The intent is to make sure that these canopies blend in with the existing materials and the existing architecture of the building as much as possible. The purpose for this, due to several factors, operations responding to COVID and operations responding to customer needs, employees are now going out into the drive-through areas in order to assist with the order-taking process. This provides them a little bit of shelter. There are some fans and heaters and lights underneath the canopies themselves. It also provides a little bit of that shelter for the vehicles as they're going through the drive-through. So that's the purpose for these particular canopies, and they both will be looking pretty much the same. The other location is in the pickup lane, and they're calling that the meal delivery canopy. So that's highlighted in the blue rectangles on the screen here. Again, it's a little bit difficult to see because it is intended to be absorbed into the architectural aesthetic of the building itself. But these give you an idea of what they're looking for. It does attempt to mirror the existing awnings that are over some of the windows on the building. One thing to note, though, there is not a door on the west elevation. So although they are proposing a canopy over the drive-through area here, the intent is for employees to actually go around the building to provide delivery service in the pickup window area. We do have, as mentioned in the staff report, a bit of a concern. Whenever the original review of the Chick-fil-A property and building were presented for Plan Commission review, there was considerable debate with regard to aesthetics along Drexel Avenue. This wasn't the first building in, but it was one of the first buildings in, especially along Drexel. So the concern is for accessory canopy structures within that front setback, especially ahead of the principal structure. And whether or not that's appropriate and what the continued appropriateness would be for those accessory structures, again, in front of the principal structure, and especially along Drexel Avenue, where we are attempting to maintain a specific aesthetic for Drexel Town Square's PUD. We do, however, as staff, acknowledge that there are operational needs, especially in response to the times that we live in with COVID and with regard to the requirements of changing operational needs for quick service restaurants. So while we do have some concerns, we also understand what the request is trying to accomplish here. So with that in mind, we do have a 2-page motion suggested for Plan Commission approval on the screen. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to say or present? Otherwise, you could be available for questions if that's your. Looks like we have somebody online.
I can't hear anybody.
Frank?
I'm wondering if, yeah.
Okay, Frank, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Mr. Chairman and all, good afternoon. And first of all, I wanted to thank all of you guys for allowing us to chime in through the Zoom. My partner in crime, Jason from Chick-fil-A, his family's come down with COVID, so here we are doing it this way. What I wanted to add was that our goal here is to satisfy 2 needs for this community. Number one, it's become necessary for Chick-fil-A employees to go outside and work in this environment in the traffic areas or the pickup window and also into the order point menu board area during the peak hours of operation. They realize that the existing menu boards that they have with the 2-way communication, speaker boxes and so forth, just doesn't cut it. So what ends up happening is you get a big pile of traffic lining up throughout the site, and it can even get nasty where it blocks off entry points to other parts of the shopping center as well as possibly going out into the street. So our main focus here for Chick-fil-A is to, number one, shelter these employees that are out there with these smart tablets and then provide traffic safety. So how this all works is you'll have about 6 employees that are at the meal delivery, the order point canopy, and they'll attack 6 cars at one time. And the payment and everything is taken right there on the smart tablet and transferred over to the kitchen. And as they process through the drive-through lane and taper into where the meal delivery window is, you're going to have another 2 to 3 employees that are out there during the shift, say from 11 o'clock in the morning till 2 or 1 o'clock or however they work it out at Chick-fil-A. And their job is to just grab the food from the pickup window and pass it off to the cars. So this has proven to be a real effective tool for Chick-fil-A. When these 2 canopies are in place, they work in a tandem effort, and it really helps with traffic safety as well as employees sheltered from the wind and rain and so forth. In reading the staff report and the Planning Commission report, I've seen that there's 6 items in here that just to everybody for an explanation. So the main one is item number 3, that any light be fully recessed and shielded from the site to the traffic lanes in Drexel Avenue. We can provide photometrics for these lights, a photometric site plan, and we will do that. And we also have opportunities to lower the light wattages to satisfy the community. And then number 5 was a kind of a big sticking point, that the heaters and fans be recessed into the canopy. Those are placed near the columns, and there's not much room to be able to screen them or actually put recess them into the roof structure, because then you would be seeing the appliances, these heaters and these fans sticking out above that rooftop. So our goal here is to try to keep these canopies as a slimline design with some high quality finishes on them, so that they look more like a canopy that matches what's at the existing sites over the window, adjacent to the restaurant there, the awning structure that you see there. So we have done in the past, created a fascia that's a little bit higher, you know, by 11 inches or so, but that seems to make the canopy stick out a lot more, especially if it was on Drexel Avenue. Pretty much in a nutshell, that's kind of the situation that we're in, and we'd like to try to help this community out. Chick-fil-A realizes that this can become a serious issue, and so we're here to address it at this time before it becomes a matter of contention. So I welcome any questions.
For the record, that was Frank Godden from Essentia Architecture on behalf of the project.
Thank you. We'll move to the commission. Any questions, starting from my right?
I do have a question for the applicant. In regards to the canopies, is there a way to, since you can't screen them, help them to blend in more with the area so they don't stand out as much?
Yeah, what we do in essence is, it was mentioned that we dress up the columns so that they look like it's part of the original construction. And if there's opportunity in the landscape area out in front, for example, where West Drexel Avenue is, Chick-fil-A doesn't have a problem of planting some larger trees in there and to try to help screen that off.
A question for Carrie, would that be an acceptable option to plant trees or taller trees in the area?
As long as they are planted in accordance with the requirements of all of the easements that are out there, especially with the utility easements and the gas easements, if they can find a way to plant trees in that area, we welcome trees.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll work with you on that.
Yeah, I have a question for the designer. Is the fans and the heater automatically operated, or are they controlled by the individuals inside the building?
Both. What we have is a set of switches that are hidden in the column that you won't see from the street that can turn them on. And then if a employee accidentally left the switch on, there's a timer on there that turns them off so that they don't remain running all day or all night or over the weekend when they're closed on Sundays.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have no questions.
No questions.
Engineering has no questions.
I have no questions. Just, I guess, a quick comment on the canopy itself. I know we kind of tried to steer away from drive-throughs in the Drexel town area, and this kind of really puts the drive-through front and center. I appreciate the attempt to have it blend in. I have seen Chick-fil-A's in other communities with these canopies. They didn't, in those areas, did not stand out horribly as you would think they would. I actually went to Chick-fil-A today for lunch, and they do have the employees outside, but as of today, with it being so cold, they have the employees in a one-person temporary shack type thing where they can barely even spin around. I can only imagine that it's less dangerous for them to be mobile under a canopy than enclosed in things they have them in right now. So if all the conditions are met, I can be in support of this. So.
And Alderman Lorik, just to clarify that point, the shelter was something that was put up pretty close to the beginning of the pandemic response. As such, staff did not require them to obtain any special approvals, but that did not obtain any permits locally. So we are requiring, as part of this suggested motion, that temporary shelter be finally removed as these canopies are intended to provide the shelter and the requirements that that temporary structure seem to be fulfilling.
Thank you. So if there's no other questions from the commission, look for a motion on A to A.
Seifert moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Frank Gadwin, Essentia Architectural LLC on behalf of Chick-fil-A for the property at 150 West Town Square Way with the following conditions.
And Commissioner, if I can interrupt you for just a moment. In recognition of the applicant's request for number 5 to be altered, I'd like the Plan Commission to include that in the motion, whether or not they are going to require that heaters and fans be recessed into the canopy wherever possible, or if not possible, that the canopy fascia be extended based on what you've heard from Mr. Gadden. Or Godden, sorry. I apologize, Frank, I don't know how to say your last name.
Not quite sure how we'll word that, number 5, but
Well, it's a matter of, does the Plan Commission want to require it or not? You can strike number 5 in its entirety, or you can try and amend it.
I have a question then. Was number 5 addressed with staff? What he told us today, was that already heard for by staff, or is that a new concern we just heard tonight?
The offer to plant trees to hide that is new to staff.
Okay, but is it new to staff that he says that neither one of those, Frank said that neither one of those are really a feasible option, either extending the fascia or, that they either be recessed or screened. He's saying neither is really possible.
So what I would offer is to amend that condition to say that the canopy fascia be extended or landscaping installed in accordance with DTS requirements to screen the equipment. Frank, is that acceptable?
for number 5, correct?
For number 5.
I don't see
Is the applicant okay with that?
I'm
okay.
waiting for a response.
Yeah, we're okay with that.
Okay.
Can you hear?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Okay. Number
So-
1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that all previous approvals and conditions of approval remain in effect. 3, that any lighting be fully recessed and shielded from line of sight to the traffic lanes in Drexel Avenue. 4, that no signage other than required regulatory signage is permitted as part or attached to the canopy or support structures. And 5, are we going to scratch 5?
Number
That's on
5
the
has
screen.
been, number 5 has been amended on the screen.
Okay, that the heaters and fans be recessed into the canopy, or if that is not possible, that the canopy facade be extended or landscaping be installed in accordance with the DTSM PD requirement to screen this equipment. 6, that the temporary shelter west of the existing menu board is removed upon completion of the installation of the canopies. 7, that all detailed final plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit application.
Oldani seconds.
Roll call, starting with Commissioner Oldani.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Guzekowski, no.
Okay, that brings us to item 8B, Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Consideration of a proposed amendment to the Comprehensive Plan, City of Oak Creek, adopted March 3rd, 2020, that would change the land use plan and category from single-family attached to mixed-use multifamily for the properties at 9102, 9120, and 9140 South 27th Street. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to amend the comprehensive plan in 2 areas for the properties listed. This is something that is in response to a conceptual plan that has been presented for Plan Commission input twice now. Also had received some extensive input from the neighbors around these properties with regard to what had been presented for conceptual consideration. So we do have the current zoning. It is in multiple districts. The request is for mixed use along 27th Street and then multifamily for the remainder of the properties. And we do have an exhibit showing where that dividing line would be. This is in advance of a request for a future 3-story mixed-use building along 27th Street for your mixed-use category. Condominium buildings, which would be your single-family attached, 15 units on the east. And just as a reminder, if this comprehensive plan amendment is recommended for approval, it is not an endorsement of the concept plan that's been presented, and it does not exempt or preclude future reviews for the proposal to develop the properties. The approval of the comprehensive plan amendment does require a majority of the entire plan commission. And it would require a majority approval of the entire common council. That's per statute. Since the hearing has been changed from the plan commission to the common council, this is kind of a holdover, so we want to make sure that we're in compliance with statutory requirements there. This is an exhibit showing where that dividing line would be for the comprehensive plan as requested. So if the request is recommended for approval, the mixed use would be for about the first 640 feet of the properties. The remaining 1,050, let's call it, feet from the dividing line would be multifamily. As with any comprehensive plan amendment, be it from staff or be it from a request by an applicant, we do look at the history of the properties as they've been developed or not developed and the surrounding area. So a brief historical review of the area. Single-family residence was on the property at 9102 South 27th Street as of 1949, and either that house has been removed or I believe it's still there. There was at one point a raise order that had been submitted for that property, but I think it was just for one of the residential buildings that was there. So we do still have at least one structure on the property. In 1993, Ordinance 1680 removed future public streets in an official map amendment. And those future public streets were shown through 9120 and 9140 South 27th Street. That had been part of a larger discussion when the future location of the park in the area was being discussed. There has been no development of 9120 or 9140 South 27th Street ever, from what we can tell. And in the previous comprehensive plan, the properties had been identified as appropriate for single-family residential development. The existing plan, what they are asking for is mixed use. So in the existing plan, the mixed use includes a definition that is multiple distinct uses stacked vertically within the same structure. What's being proposed along 27th Street appears to meet that particular part of the definition. And multifamily, which is the request, is identified in the comprehensive plan, or defined rather, as partially multiple housing units stacked vertically and often having a common entrance and shared amenities. And that's something that I'd like to discuss with the Plan Commission, because while the request is for multifamily due to the number of units per building, we had discussed as part of the zoning code update, and the applicant was not aware of this, that a single-family attached component of a development could be considered for in meeting certain criteria in the zoning code update. So in this case, anything that would be more than 4 units in an attached situation, and if those units would be 2-story in nature, that could be considered single-family attached in the new code with a conditional use permit. So it's up to the Plan Commission if this is going to be recommended for approval, whether multifamily is going to be the category that is most appropriate, or for consideration, single-family attached, with the understanding that the zoning code would allow for that if it were adopted. There are other historic developments in the area. South Hills Estates, it created Hilltop Lane, subdivided the parcels north, created 26th Street and 21st Street, and that was platted in 1956. South Hills Estates West reconfigured some parcels and accesses between 27th Street and 26th Street. All but the 27th Street parcels and a drainage outlot were developed with single-family residential. Parcels south of Hilltop to 20th Street were divided by CSM, and some of those were developed with single-family. And Oak Shores Apartments was developed between 1995 and 1999. You can see in the comprehensive plan the surrounding area for the land use calls for commercial along 27th Street to the north, single-family detached, which is the lighter yellow to the north, single-family attached, which includes those properties south of Hilltop and including the subject properties, and multifamily to the south, and that's capturing the existing apartment developments. And you can see the park is outlined in green on that map as well. Conceptual plans have been provided. This is a little bit different from the last iteration that was reviewed by the Plan Commission, but this is pretty close to what had been submitted prior. 15 units of condos on the east side rather than, I believe we had 18 or 23 at one point. The number of apartment units in that mixed-use building has also been reduced to 50 in this concept plan. The commercial space has been increased to 14,000 square feet. Based on Plan Commission input, some of those amenities around the mixed-use building have been moved, more in support of the single-family residential on the east side. Detention basins, the access, those pretty much stayed the same in this concept. But this is not a review of the concept plan. This is just providing some additional information in support of the comprehensive plan request. And again, any plans that would be proceeding through the process, should the comprehensive plan amendment be approved, that might incorporate anything going from an official map, well, actually not an official map amendment, but it would be going through the rezone process, potentially conditional use, potentially PUD, et cetera. We did take a look at what the existing uses are in the surrounding area as well. There were some commercial areas, again, along 27th Street, the former Agave restaurant. To the north and east, single-family residents, including the subdivisions. And to the south, we have the multifamily, which is Oak Shores. And then south of that, continuing that corridor, that's part of the reason that staff included some additional information in the evaluation. We do have a transition zone here. That's why these parcels had been identified for single-family attached. And that's exactly what the comprehensive plan calls for. When you have an area of single-family or low-density development transitioning to the multifamily, so in between, we're identifying where a single-family attached component would be appropriate. And then further down that corridor, we have multifamily transitioning to the commercial zone. So it really is a natural progression along 27th Street here that the comprehensive plan amendment was trying to identify. So some considerations in addition to the single family attached as an option and the transition zone. We do have proximity to residential, so we do need to address that. And also, although it's not part of a plan that's proposed by the Plan Commission for approval, there is still some concern about the availability of utilities to serve this development. With that in mind, we do have a suggested motion or motions. We recognize that there are two requests on this agenda item. So if the Plan Commission wishes to address them both together, there would be one motion. If you'd like to take them separately, you would have two motions, and I will caution that that would change the resolution numbers slightly for these comprehensive plan amendment requirements or requests. should you wish to take them separately, then it would be the same motion, but just for the single-family attached mixed use, and then a second motion for single-family attached to multifamily. And the resolution number would change from 2022-01 for the first, and then to 2022-02 for the second, and then again, that would affect the comprehensive plan amendment request that's next on the agenda for a separate item. That's a lot of information, I understand, so I anticipate that there would be questions, but I will pass it to the chair.
Thank you, Carrie. We will start with the applicant. Is the applicant available? Do they have comments to make before we turn it over to the commission? Okay. So we will start with questions from the commission, starting from my left.
I have no questions. I guess my primary comment would be, you know, we've gone through the zoning code and the comprehensive plan quite extensively. I think changing it to a multifamily zoning would be a misstep in this situation. I think single-family attached is very appropriate. I think we should really consider deeply on that. Mixed use, we've seen that throughout the city. Residential on top, commercial on the bottom. Some areas it struggles, some areas it does okay. So on 27th Street corridor, next to residential and multifamily being the only one out there, is it going to be effective or not? That's not for me to determine, but I have concerns.
This is in my district, and currently as it stands, I don't support it for a few reasons. Mostly, I wouldn't support the mixed use. If anything, I agree, it would be a single family. Also, the commercial, and then that is, would be possibly 3-story. Thank you.
I have no questions.
I guess I support you. I have a question about the multifamily and the mixed use. We keep changing as the conditions rise, and I'm not totally in supportive of it.
I have a question for the applicant.
Jason Christensen, Nielsen, Madsen, and Barber, civil engineer for the project, 1458 Horizon Boulevard, Racine, Wisconsin.
Can you share if the plans fall under that, what's it called, single family attached, where you have over 4 units and 2 stories? The items that you're putting in this area, does it fall under that description for single family attached?
So it's kind of a new development here. From the sounds of it, it looks like the multifamily portion of this would fall under that single family attached as part of a conditional use. It states 4 or more units. We do have one building that is only 3 units. I'm not sure how that gets classified.
It would be for a complex, so it would all be under one approval at that point.
Okay, so my understanding is the multifamily portion would fit the current single-family attached land use portion of it, yes.
Okay, and then the mixed use, can you provide a little information about that as well?
Well, the mixed use, I mean, obviously we're along the 27th Street corridor here. The property's currently zoned B4. It's zoned for commercial. I understand the comprehensive land use plan shows it as single-family attached, but we really are kind of meeting that current zoning of business right now. It's just we're adding the component of the residential on top of it. So we're looking for that transition from the residential to the commercial, which really does fit in with the 27th Street corridor.
And just a question for Carrie. So for that area, it's still identified as single family attached, or property identified for single family attached, not mixed use? Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
You are understanding that correctly. In the
Okay.
existing comprehensive plan, all the properties south of Hilltop until you get to Oak Shores Apartments property, those have been identified for future development or redevelopment as single-family attached. We do recognize that there are portions of the properties that are currently within a business district zoning. Historically, they have not developed in such a way, probably for various reasons throughout the years. The question is whether or not a mixed-use component that has that kind of vertical integration is appropriate here. Certainly small-scale neighborhood service or commercial would be something that would be appropriate in this area. It's something that historically has been along the 27th Street corridor. There really hasn't been kind of that vertical integration of mixed use or commercial or even apartments for that matter, with the exception of Oak Shores, which is a little bit further down and extends almost into that commercial corridor along Ryan Road. So it's we understand that this is a transition zone, but we do still have the concerns for the vertical component of that mixed use. And mostly, again, for the appropriateness next to existing single-family residential, understanding that, again, this isn't a B zone, a B4 district, which would allow for commercial. But the transition area, based on that historic designation, doesn't seem to lend itself to a viable commercial operation, although we don't know what the market is until a market study has been done. So at this point, it's really up to the commission and the applicant to make that determination as to whether vertical integration here is appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, just to, I guess, for myself, clarify the process. This is the comprehensive plan that we're looking to possibly amend. So our recommendation, if it passed today, would go to the Common Council. They would still need to rezone the properties, correct?
Correct.
And then bring forth plans after that.
There would be multiple reviews that would be required. Rezoning, conditional use potentially, plan unit development potentially, site and building plan review certainly. So depending on what the actual proposal for development of the property would be, would determine the reviews, but there would be several that would be required. And all of them would come back to the Plan Commission. Some of them would also have to go to the Common Council.
So just my 2 cents, if I heard staff correctly, and I know I heard the rest of the commissioners correctly, I think there's definitely concern that the single-family attached listed in the comprehensive plan was created as a sort of a buffer between the residential and the multifamily south of there. And I guess I'd be hard pressed to immediately switch it, considering this plan was just created in 2020, going against what was just created in order for this development to work with regard to the comprehensive plan. So I would support the other commissioners in maintaining the single family attached within the comprehensive plan. If there's any other discussion, questions, otherwise we can entertain
I do have a question. So since the multifamily meets the requirements of the single family attached, do we still include that in the motion?
That's a very good question. And I think that it is within the Plan Commission's purview to identify the change in the zoning code update, which I just want to make clear, that zoning code update, it has not yet been adopted. Okay. That's actually the last item for the Plan Commission's consideration on this agenda. But that also has to go through a public hearing process with the Common Council. So while we are recommending that that be the case, we do recognize that there is the potential for the zoning code to, for whatever reason, either be amended to not incorporate that or not be adopted in time for whatever the timeline is that the applicant wishes to proceed with their development. You have two options. One, you can either recommend that the multifamily be adopted, or two, you can exclude that from your motion. If you wish to have two motions, you can certainly do you can certainly do that as well, identifying that the multifamily, however you want to proceed.
Thank you.
So if the commission believes that the multifamily, depending on the outcome of the code change later today, the commission believes that the multifamily would fit within the single family attached, instead of amending the current single family attached to mixed use and multifamily, it can either remain single family attached completely, or could a motion be amended to switch it from single family attached to mixed use and single family attached?
You wouldn't need to do that. There's
Okay.
two options, and I apologize if this isn't clear. One way would be to have two different motions. You vote on the mixed use for the first 642 or whatever it is feet, and make that a motion. You could have a second motion on the multifamily, and decide that way. Or what you could do is say, the existing proposal for what they are asking multifamily, what the multifamily land use category would actually fit under what we think is going to pass. You can just say, we're going to exclude that from our motion altogether and just vote on the mixed use. It wouldn't affect then the single family attached, which theoretically wouldn't affect the ability for them to proceed with the conceptual plan under that comprehensive plan amendment and under that zoning code.
Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? It sounds like we would just need to
One motion.
motion on the first 600 feet, the mixed use. If we're willing to switch that from single family attached to mixed use.
Right.
Correct.
That would work.
One
No.
motion.
Just one motion and exclude multi.
Because, and I don't want to speak for everybody on the commission, but it sounds like everybody was in agreement that if the code passes later tonight, what they're calling multifamily will fit in the existing comprehensive plan, so we don't need to address the eastern portion of the property. So one motion for the mixed use portion is all we need.
Now, let me throw one more wrench in here, sorry. If you wanted it to be very specifically clear, and if you wanted it to be unquestionable based on the specific request, you could still make two motions, one for the mixed use and one for the multifamily. Should the multifamily portion not pass, it wouldn't affect the category, but it would still be acting on the original request, just providing that clarity there. I know. I've given you too many options.
Somebody want to try a motion?
Commission, I suggest if, from what I'm hearing, I suggest we do two motions. One for the mixed use, and then one for the multifamily. That would probably clear it up and clarify it. That way, if the multifamily does fail, it still stays a single family attached in the comprehensive plan. It would still meet their proposal as far as the development. That way it's clear they requested it, either deny it or accept it.
Try a motion. Will both motions have the same addresses in them?
Yes.
What about the resolution? Do we change that number?
The resolution would be something that would have to be amended based on the Plan Commission's decision.
Okay, so the language language in the suggestion motion as we see it on the screen is just gonna be exactly the same. Let's split it in half,
Multifamily is
minus the multifamily.
So both motions will be the same, except one we will say single family attached to mixed use, and one we will say single family attached to multifamily.
Correct.
not joining in. Okay. I'll take a stab and then I'll leave. No. Okay, that the planning commission adopt resolution 2022-01, amending the land use plan category in a comprehensive plan, City of Oak Creek, adopted March 3rd, 2020, amended November 17th, 2020, from single-family attached to mixed use for the properties at 9102, 9120, and 9140 South 27th Street, following the review and adoption by the Common Council.
Now, let me just clarify so that everybody is aware that the suggested motion incorporates the correct portion of the property for mixed use.
Okay?
And that is per the exhibit that was provided for the first 642.04 feet of all of those properties.
We want to add that?
You want to say so moved? It has been added.
I don't think, we'll just leave it out.
So moved.
Huh?
You can just say so moved.
So move, yeah.
Oracle second. Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Siebert.
No.
Chandler, no.
Sullivan, no.
Lorick, no.
Guzekowski, no.
Eldani, aye.
And a second motion on the multifamily.
Will the second motion be resolution -02?
No, you can just say 2022-01, it's fine.
That the Plan Commission adopts Resolution 2022-1, amending the land use plan category in the comprehensive plan, City of Oak Creek, adopted March 3rd, 2020, amended November 17th, 2020, from single-family attached to multifamily for the properties at 9102, 9120, 9140 South 27th Street, following review and adoption by the Common Council.
And the clarifying language is per the exhibit that was presented, and that is for the east 1,042.81 feet of the properties.
Amended.
Oracle second. Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Chandler.
Chandler, aye.
Sullivan, no.
Lorick, no.
Guzekowski, no.
Eldani, aye.
Siebert, no.
I believe both motions failed. So the comprehensive plan is not recommended for amendment. The comprehensive plan is not being recommended for amendment. So the single-family attached categories would remain.
So that brings us to item 8C, another comprehensive plan amendment. Consideration of a proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan, City of Oak Creek, adopted March 3rd, 2020, that would change the land use plan and category from single-family detached to single-family attached. No change to the floodway category for portions of the properties at 2231 East Putes, 8843R South 13th Street, and 8950 South 20th Street. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is another comprehensive plan amendment request for those properties. We do have a diagram that would clarify exactly what portions of those properties are being requested as well. Current zoning, we have a mix. due to the large area that the parcels encompass. So it's before RD1, RS2, floodway, neighborhood overlay, and flood fringe, as well as shoreline wetland conservancy. Keep in mind that the zoning is not changing, and the zoning would not necessarily be affected by the comprehensive plan amendment. Rezoning would come at a later date should these be recommended for approval. So the proposal is for single-family detached to single-family attached, no change to the floodway areas for portions of the properties. Again, we will have a diagram that shows what that looks like. This is in anticipation of future single-story 4, 6, and 8 unit buildings in a planned unit development scenario. This would be semi-treated like a condo development would, although a condo development is not required. Again, if approved, the comprehensive plan amendment does not mean that it's an endorsement of any conceptual plan. Future reviews would be required for development of the property, whatever would be proposed. This does require an approval by the majority of the Plan Commission. And this is the diagram that is identifying those particular portions of the property that are in this request. Anything that is in red for Zone 2 is not included in the amendment request at this time. The portions in green are being requested to be amended to single-family attached with no change to the floodway. There was a little bit of a confusion within the narrative when you first read it about the property that is in the hatched area. That is not being changed at this time. So we have a diagram that identifies where the proposed development would be, and those are the changes that are being requested right now. As with the previous request, there is a history within the area and on the properties themselves, and it's kind of an interesting one. Prior to the 1950s, these properties were part of what can only be assumed to be a larger farmstead and forested area. Between 1937 and 1951, the parcels began to be divided, starting with one of the first being the Oakwood Motel. By 1967, the properties had been parceled off, and all but one of the existing single-family residential properties had been created and developed by that time. Between 1997 and 2004, we see the development to the north of the proposal in Apple Creek Farms and Chateau Condos. Those are developed in multiple stages as well. The parcels themselves had not been developed from the original farmsteads, save for the installation of infrastructure, and that installation had been in support of the Putes Road water storage facility to the north. The official map follows the installation of those utilities, so those utilities are actually in. They may need to be, the official map showing the future road pattern may need to be amended based on the future development proposal, and we will talk about that at a later date. But the land use categories that had been previously identified in the comprehensive plan prior to the 2020 version were planned business, single-family residential, two-family townhouse residential, and resource protection area. And the official map did follow those land use categories closely. In 2020, the comprehensive plan identifies single-family attached as those two-family residential row homes, townhomes, or duplexes. The nomenclature is changing, but we're all getting at the same kind of product. They share at least one common wall with an adjacent dwelling, and each unit has its own separate external entrance. Now that's important because what we're talking about, especially with the zoning code update that we mentioned in the previous comprehensive plan amendment request, we are suggesting that those units that are in a single-family or in a single-story configuration, all attached, serve as and are designed as single-family residential units, but may be up to 4 units in a building. That might be allowed as a permitted use in residential districts. Anything more than the 4 units in a single-story configuration would require a conditional use permit under the zoning code that we are presenting for consideration by the Plan Commission tonight. So we have some additional information about how the comprehensive plan treats single-family attached housing and what the intended development patterns would be. For existing context, the parcels themselves are in a very odd configuration based on how they had been parceled off over the years. So this is actually 3 parcels that are being shown on the screen right now. The light yellow is your single-family detached, your traditional single-family residential developments. And then we've got a mix of uses that have been identified as appropriate for the area, also recognizing the historical development in the area. So to the north, we have multifamily and single-family attached and single-family detached as part of that kind of mixed residential area to the north. Much of the area has been identified for single-family detached. Along 27th Street, we find a commercial corridor that may or may not be developed in the future or redeveloped. And there are floodway areas throughout. As part of the staff evaluation, we did also look at the existing uses in the area, and we mentioned those previously. The commercial unit uses along 27th Street, again, are limited to the Oakwood Motel and Jim Dandy's, even though there is a commercial strip that's identified in that corridor. In general, the concept plan that has been presented meets the definition in the comprehensive plan for single-family attached land uses. And as we mentioned quite a few times now, the zoning code update does allow for single-family attached configurations in more than just your traditional side-by-side or 2-story duplex scenario. And as we've seen, there is a mix of existing residential housing types in the immediate area. So a single-family attached product in this area would not be uncommon based on the historic development patterns we see here. The 2 properties that are right along I-94 have historically been zoned for 2-family residential since at least the 1990s. And those have been identified, at least a majority of those properties had been identified in the previous comprehensive plan as appropriate for 2-family and townhouse residential. So there is some consideration that goes back to the 1990s for more than a single-family detached type of development in this area. We do have a requirement that per Wisconsin statutes, adoption of any amendment must be by a majority approval of the entire Plan Commission and Common Council. State of Wisconsin Smart Growth Law requires that all local land use decisions after January 1st, 2010 must be consistent with the objectives, goals, and policies contained within the comprehensive plan. We do also need to mention that the approval of a comprehensive plan amendment does not preclude or exclude additional reviews that would be necessary. Going through the concept plan, we would be talking about potentially official map amendment, rezoning, conditional use and or plan unit development, certified survey maps, plan reviews, architectural reviews, all of which would come back to the Plan Commission, some of which would go before the Common Council. So with that in mind, there is a suggested motion on the screen for Plan Commission consideration for amending the comprehensive plan to single-family attached. Again, no change to the floodway category. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. It looks like the applicant is with us. Do you have a presentation or something you wanted to say prior to questions from the commission?
Yeah, I think we'll run through a couple of things pretty quickly.
Okay. If we can just get your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Josh Walreich. I live at 313 Surrey Lane, Lake Forest, Illinois. Carrie, I don't think it's necessary to bring up the presentation. I think we'll probably just go through something a little bit more abbreviated. So first, I'd like to thank staff and Mayor Berkowitz and Alder Guzikowski for the guidance and assistance in bringing forth our application for a comp plan amendment tonight. We'd like to start by reading a paragraph from Section 3 of the existing comprehensive plan. We do not come to the commission asking for your endorsement of a change to the comprehensive plan lightly, but we feel it's justified in this case. And Section 3 of the comp plan states the following. The land use plan is a general guide for the growth and development in Oak Creek and is meant to serve as a foundation for future decision making. It is not meant to be a site-specific development or zoning plan, but rather a guide for land use decisions. The land use plan is flexible and should accommodate creative approaches to development that are consistent with the policies and recommendations included in the comprehensive plan. End quote. We believe the site plan that we will propose for this land represents a creative approach to development and most importantly is consistent with the policies and recommendations detailed in the comp plan. Specifically, the housing and neighborhood framework. If granted approvals, what we will develop on the site will embody these. More specifically, it will not increase density. Rather, the result is a decrease in density to 2.76 units an acre. It honors the neighbors by buffering the subject development from adjacent properties with large setbacks and the preservation of existing old growth vegetation. It will provide housing considered part of the missing middle, a key component for diversified housing stock in a product type largely absent in Oak Creek. It will appeal to a diverse set of the population wanting accommodations that live like a single-family home, but are either unable or unwilling to embark on or continue with home ownership. And it honors the environment by achieving national green building standards and preserving and creating open space. Now I'm going to hand it off to my partner Ryan, who will detail some additional considerations that we would like the council to know.
Hello, my name is Ryan Swingruber. I live at 228 Raymond Avenue in Barrington, Illinois. And so thank you once again for allowing us to present and speaking to what my partner just said. We spent an extensive amount of time working with staff and understanding the housing and neighborhoods framework within the comp plan, and I'm going to briefly just go through the 7 objectives and goals of that framework and how we believe that what we're proposing meets the majority of those and is consistent with those objectives. And so the first one was objective is to promote reinvestment, specifically in mature single-family communities or neighborhoods in the Oak Creek community. This site is adjacent to mature single-family neighborhoods, and it's never been developed. As Carrie had mentioned, that since the 1990s, despite a duplex two-family zoning designation has not been developed. And we see this as a reinvestment in the mature single-family neighborhoods within Oak Creek, and it's responsible in the sense that it's single-story, low density, and the architecture will be consistent with surrounding single-family homes, given we're proposing modern craftsman-style architecture. Objective 2 is to target residential development, and specifically this objective does speak to diversifying housing, and when it speaks to single-family attached, it talks about key corridors. 2 of those corridors are the 27th Street corridor and I-94, and it furthermore goes on to speak about single-family attached and multifamily being used as a buffer to single-family detached from some of the from the corridors, specifically I-94, which this aims to accomplish. Objective 3 is attainable housing. Entry-level single-family homes and home ownership is becoming increasingly more difficult, especially for millennials. This provides a housing option to Oak Creek that eliminates the down payment and the cost burden of overhead and maintenance of a home and allows for that demographic to save for eventual home ownership, but while living in something that feels like a home in Oak Creek. Objective 4 is to promote affordable senior housing. Our community will be universally designed. That means no step entry, no stairs, no ramps, proper opening sizes and approaches, ADA compliant, and all the units will be designed as universally designed. And so when we talk about promoting affordable senior housing, independent living and assisted living options are relatively expensive. And so there's always that transition from when does a baby boomer, a senior, a downsizer make that commitment to move to that next type of housing. This provides an option to plan for the eventual IL, AL, while eliminating some of the overhead and the maintenance of owning a home, but while still living in something that lives and feels like a home and maintaining residency in Oak Creek before making that step to IL, AL. Objective 5 is to encourage conservation-oriented development. It's specifically sites that are burdened by wetlands. This one has a considerable amount of wetlands, which has prevented development ever on the site. And so when you look at our site plan, what we're proposing, and specifically picking Zone 1 for the comp plan amendment, this embodies cluster development, and what it allows us to do is preserve the majority of the site as open and green space or existing vegetation, which is less impactful and allows us to deliver 2.7 units per acre, which is less than the current density. Objective 6 is to increase density where appropriate along key corridors. While we're not asking to increase density, we're actually reducing it. This would be classified as a key corridor, I-94, and it speaks to multifamily and single-family attached along that corridor, and we think single-family attached makes sense for those reasons. Objective 7 is foster community health, and this speaks to universal design, which I've already touched on. The proposed project will be universally designed, which promotes community health, but it also talks about preserving open space, green space, and creating connectivity. And the proposed amendment and site plan, as you can see, will create connectivity throughout the site through an extensive network of sidewalks, but will at the same time preserve existing wetlands, green space, open space, and existing vegetation. So thank you for letting me speak, but those are the 7 objectives, and we really took a great deal of time working with staff and getting feedback from a public meeting, as well as presenting to this commission to try to make sure that what we were requesting was in line with the comp plan's housing and neighborhoods framework objectives. So thank you.
Really quickly, just let me add one thing. If the Plan Commission would so like, we can go through some of the renderings of what the product is intended to look like. We presented that in a concept plan review previously. We were in front of this Plan Commission, but that was 6-8 weeks ago at this point. And so if that refresher is helpful, we can do so.
Sure. If you want to briefly go through that.
All right, Carrie, do you know if it's possible if I could share my screen? Or do you think it's easiest for you to pull that up? Right, perfect. Yeah, that's my screen. That works. So we're looking at the overall development right here. This is the 91-acre parcel, and again, as the previous slide had showed, we are not requesting a comp plan amendment on the entirety of this parcel. Parcel 2 is left out completely, and it's only a portion of parcel 1 and 3 and 4 that are being considered tonight. Everything over here remains under its current comp plan designation. Zooming in a little bit on this, this embraces what Ryan was just talking about when it comes to cluster development. What you're looking at on the screen in totality is 50 acres. And on these 50 acres, only 20 acres are being developed. The 30 acres around the perimeter and all of this open space is to remain as open space. So it really does embody cluster development. Now, one thing I would state that's deceiving in an image of this nature is really how large these open spaces that we've created inside of our development between the buildings are. We're looking at roughly 80 to 90 feet between these front doors of these buildings. And again, to rehash what we had discussed in the concept plan, all of these units are rear loaded. So you've got private alleyways that provide vehicular access and additional parking for residents and their guests. And then their front doors open onto these large communal green spaces and or to the preserved nature space on the perimeter of the property. And then here's an image of what these buildings look like. Every building on the site, again, single-story product. There is no more than 4, 6, or 8 units in any given building. And going back to this plan, there's only 2 buildings that will have 8 units in them. Everything else is 6 units or 4 units. And this is the front door of 2 units. The front door is over here. Each unit will have a private covered porch and a private dedicated side patio as well. And this is a view of what these units look like when getting together in a building. This would be a 6-unit building, and you're looking at 4 individual front doors in this image. And then, as I mentioned, here's your vehicular access for your cars, as well as a pedestrian door next to your garage. And you can see how each unit will have 2-car guest parking on right in front of their, in a tandem nature in front of their garage. Overall, the site is parked at over more than 4 cars per unit. So there's plenty of parking provided for guests and for residents. And then here is a image of the same product type, just in a different color palette. And throughout the project, we'll probably have multiple color palettes that will differentiate buildings. And another look, and then also the garage. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn it over to the commission, starting with Commissioner Chandler. Any questions?
I do have a question for the applicant. So for the Zone 2 that we're not discussing today, just a quick question, would those be single-family detached items on that land?
Yes, that is correct. That land use and zoning designation, we are not requesting to change. That will remain.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question for the fire department.
Sorry for the long walk up, but again, Mike Cavey, Oak Creek Fire.
I saw you sleeping back there. No, I just kidding. The question we had last time was 2 roads rather than just one for the fire department. And is that changed at, when we had a dead end for a single family, you could only have 15 homes and so forth. Here is multifamily. Do we have a problem?
So this plan, there is a secondary access through 20th Street that will give us access to the subdivision or the projected proposal. So that does satisfy what we're looking for fire protection.
So the single road will satisfy the fire department.
So we have an access road from Putes Road going from south into the project, and then from 20th Street extends from the north into that section of the project.
That's just a backup or support. It's not an actual permanent road, I should say. Right? On that cul-de-sac?
That'll be, an engineer can confirm that it'll be a paved road for access to that site.
Yeah, it'll be paved road, but it will be gated to some standards, so it would not be a public access.
I'm just checking to make sure that we have it covered, because I
Sure.
know you people are concerned about the single roads.
Right, so the project in itself for access, we feel comfortable with, and utilities, that still has to be vetted out for some of those issues. Like I said, in concept, we don't have any issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, any other questions? As long as I'm here.
I have no questions.
This does fall into my district. I did meet with these 2 gentlemen, and they brought me in early in the conversations, so thank you very much. I did share with them concerns that, we thought that we felt we would have for the neighbors or neighborhood. And I do appreciate the fact that you guys have a less dense type of look. And also, I did support this after we were talking about it, and I still, with the latest revisions, I would support this coming in.
Engineering has no comments. Thank you.
I agree with Alderman Guzikowski. I was in support of this after the initial presentation. I do think it's an appropriate use of that area, similar to the previous one that was single-family attached. It's used kind of as a buffer, in this case, between some single-family detached to the southwest, between the freeway and Putes and everything. And then realizing this is just addressing the comprehensive plan. What's the current zoning of the
It's a mixed bag right now.
area? Okay.
So it depends on where you are on the parcels. The 2 parcels that are identified as 3 and 4, if you can see it, these 2, they're currently zoned RD1, which is 2-family residential. So we would have a situation where this parcel here, well, portion of the parcel would have to be rezoned anyway. The floodway designation would not change.
So similar to the last one, if this one does pass, it goes to the Common Council. There would then be rezones and then multiple plan reviews
Correct.
moving forward. So I have nothing else to add. If nobody has any other questions, concerns. Oh, we have a comment from the audience. Just need your name and address, please, sir.
Patrick Chateau, 2021 West Grays. Okay, you're saying the floodplain. My house is right there. I'm paying flood insurance because it's on a floodplain. If you walk back in that area, back in the wooded area, it's all swamp back there. Your soil sample people were out there taking samples. They should know that it's back there. On a very good heavy rain, that field floods. My property floods. There's flooding in there. So how are you saying you're not going to screw up the floodplain? Nobody's on your staff has probably walked back there and physically taken a look back there. Have they?
So no, that is not correct. So we've spent a significant amount of time and money with consultants and had it reviewed by all the governing agencies of the state, whether that be DNR, Army Corps, et cetera. And so there's an extensive review that we have to go through before we're permitted permits to allow to development in what you're referring to as the floodplain. So those are designated by a wetland delineation, so we know exactly where they are. And we're bound to have wetland setbacks from those areas so we don't impact them. Furthermore, our site plan is going to propose an extensive detention and stormwater system that's going to collect that water closer to I-94. So if anything, that's going to move any existing conditions or problems that you're experiencing further away from your property.
Yeah, move the mosquito ponds further towards the freeway. Because you're saying, then I can tell my insurance company, because of your details in that my property I do not have to pay flood insurance because of where it's at. Because if you look at Gray's Lane, it's right in the center, right in 4, I believe. And I have to pay flood insurance because I'm up there. So I don't know where you're getting your stuff. Of course, it's engineers. Excuse me. Here's a joke about engineers. I worked construction for many years, and I have no use for them. But you need to take and do a little bit more research back there. That's all flooded. If my property floods, and I've seen it, I've lived out there, you guys just come and go, oh yeah, okay, here, yeah, somebody walks it and they say, oh, there's no floodplains. Somebody needs to get a life and take and go out there and physically see what's going on.
Thank you. Okay, yes, sir. Just need your name and address.
Lasik, 2401 West Hilltop Lane. And I would like to address the concern that the fire chief just talked about, and that is your assurance that if they do link it to 20th Street, that this is just a limited access for the fire department for emergency purposes. We have serious traffic problems on 20th Hilltop. When they punch through 20th to the apartments, it just opened it up. It's a racetrack. And the last thing we need is more traffic in that subdivision.
You know, I think we can leave engineering could answer this, but I know for sure that that's been the discussion all along, is that would be a gated access only.
Yes,
Chain.
because, and again, not getting into the previous discussion, that's another huge problem with that development, is we're putting more traffic where it doesn't need to be.
Right.
It's residential, and now it's a racetrack. So, thank you. I just wanted that assurance that that is in fact the way
Yes, it is.
it would be.
Yes, ma'am. Just need you on the mic.
On Chateau, Gray's Lane, just what he said. If you go down 20th Street, there's a whole bunch of red signs up there. That's to keep the drunks out of my yard and hitting my house. 4 times.
Okay.
So that's another problem that I wasn't even thinking about. But yeah, they sure the gas meter off, and I had to have We Energies and everybody. The drunks just take and come down there, and that's why engineering, I think it was engineering or streets, put up all these signs to make it physically impossible to get it. The last time, they almost took the fire hydrant out.
Okay, thank you. With this development, though, there will be a gated road there, so we'll prevent that from this development at least. Need your name and address, please, ma'am.
2411 West Putes Road. Now, I'm in the other section, but I heard him say about that would be the single family attached. Now, that would be up to 4 homes in that. Well, we had that. We went through so much to keep that as a single-family residence around us. And if you allow this, you're allowing them to put more houses
Right now with this plan,
connected. And you know what? That isn't right, because we fought for so long to keep that. And then now this developer, I mean, we fought with Northine, we fought with Rudolph. I mean, we've been out here all of our life.
Yeah.
And then to just say, oh, well, so what? We'll put 4 families right next to your house and right behind you. And you know what? That was never designed for that, ever.
and you're talking about zone 2, correct? You're surrounded by
Yes,
zone 2.
I am. But
right
if
now
you do
there's-
the zoning, and that would be part of it. If he buys this and owns this, he'll want it for all of it.
Okay, and right now we're not discussing that, we're not changing anything with that.
Well, I
That's
got
not
the
included
paper
in
that
this.
said if you're to be here, if it's being discussed on 300 feet to your property. Well, that would be 300 feet to my property.
Okay,
So, I mean, either you're wording things wrong and not saying what's true, or you're gonna try to rezone the stuff so the people who live there will find out later it's been rezoned, just like over on the Honadale property.
and I think what the issue is here is, and Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, this is all one piece of property. We're discussing just the zone 1 of this. Zone 2 is part of the property, but that's excluded from all of this right now. The reason that you were included is because technically you're within 300 feet of the property as a whole.
Right.
They're only discussing zone 1. Any change we make today is for zone 1. We're not discussing zone 2 at this time.
And so, 6 months down the line, I don't have to get a letter saying, oh, well, that was changed?
Well, you would when we discuss zone 2, is that correct?
So anything that happens with these properties, anybody within 300 feet, or if the alderman requests anything more than 300 feet for notification purposes, you would get notified. That doesn't mean that they are suddenly proposing to develop zone 2. It means that what they're proposing right now has to go through multiple reviews, and you would get notification for every single review that is proposed for these properties.
So that means I have to come down for every time there's anything discussed on this
You don't
property.
have to attend the meeting, but you certainly can provide
Oh,
written comments ahead of
I certainly
time.
will be here.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the commission? If not, I'll take a motion on 8C.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the plan commission change the land use plan category from single-family detached to single-family attached. No change to the floodway category. For portions of the properties at 2231 East Peach Road, 8843R South 13th Street, and 8950 South 20th Street.
Oracle second. Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Sullivan.
Sullivan, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Haldani, aye.
Secret eye.
Chandler, no.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 8D, which is a plan commission consultation. Discussion of a potential online auto wholesale dealership concept for Prestige Auto, submitted by Abdul Jawad, United Auto Leasing, doing business as Prestige Motors for the property at 150 West Ryan Road. This is a consultation only, no action will be taken on this item. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are discussing the property that is currently developed and is the former site of Educators Credit Union. It's currently zoned B3, and the conforming conditional use associated with it is specifically for the credit union. There is floodway, flood fringe, and we suspect wetlands that have been identified on this property as well. The portion that we are discussing is the currently developed part. Again, this is conceptual, so this is just to get initial feedback from the Plan Commission in preparing future development plans or redevelopment plans for this property. As part of the proposal, what they're hoping to get feedback on is an auto wholesale dealership. There's been no details with regard to whether or not the site itself would be amended. The building itself would have a couple of amendments. One would be to remove the existing drive-through canopy that is serving the financial institution portion of the property. Additional reviews would also be required. A rezone of the property because an auto dealership is not allowed in the B3 district. Conditional use permit would be required based on whatever district would be requested, probably B4, which is highway business. And certainly plan review because we do have a couple of considerations with regard to this existing condition property. What is highlighted in yellow is really just the area that is currently developed. It is kind of a flag lot, so there's a portion that extends beyond this, but it's a skinny portion and it's in the floodway and again impacted by wetlands and floodplain, so that's not something that would be developable at this point. As Ryan Road or Highway 100 has expanded over the years, it has contributed, possibly caused, but at least contributed to the non-conforming status of this property. It's non-conforming in terms of setbacks for the existing sign. So that sign would have to be relocated. It could not be reused. There is also consideration for setbacks to pavement. Pavement does not appear to meet the setback requirement here. And with consideration of the proposed use, although we don't have many details at this point, in the new zoning code, we do have transition areas and landscape areas, and we do have screening requirements for vehicular display areas or parking areas. That would affect the existing parking stalls on the property and redevelopment purposes. With regard to the trash that's on the property right now, no enclosure has ever been created for this property, so we just have dumpsters that are kind of hanging out in a parking lot. That would be a requirement for them to be located in an approved dumpster enclosure. Concept plans are on the screen right now. You can see that, again, there is a wetland line there. I'm not sure whether or not there's been a formal delineation of the wetlands on the property, but that would be something that would behoove the landowner. No changes for the pavement or anything like that. The only change that has been included in the conceptual plan, again, is the removal of that drive-through canopy for the financial institution. Most of what has been included in the brief narrative request has been internal renovations to the building as a proposal. So we do have some concerns about the appropriateness for the use of the property as an auto dealership, be it wholesale, online, or physical. We don't have enough information from what we received to make a formal recommendation either way, really. Again, we do have some issues with regard to existing setbacks. Mentioned the sign and the asphalt and parking setbacks, the landscaping concerns with the transition areas. We also do not have sufficient information with regard to lighting. If there would be any additional lighting requested for the parking lots for the vehicle display areas, that would be a consideration. Those light fixtures would have to be shielded, cut off, directed downward, and meet the 3,500 Kelvin maximum per the new zoning code. So we do have some considerations for the redevelopment of this property. And with that, I will turn it back to the chairman for continuation of the discussion.
Thank you. Is the applicant here to present anything? Just need your name and address, please, for the record.
Good evening. Imad Nadis, 2504 West Bridge Street. I'm the civil engineer on the project. Representing the owner, the company is based in California, and they're moving their business to. So, just I'm sorry that I did not provide enough information in the narrative. This is a kind of online wholesale business, so it's not a conventional traffic. People come in and buy cars. This is a high-end luxury vehicles. Everything can be done online. So we anticipate the maximum number of vehicles at any time between only 12, 15 maximum. And this is going to be in the back area. So we're not going to have probably the same number of vehicles seen at this time for the current business. We look at your comments, Carrie, and we discussed that with the owner, and he is completely agree. As far as the landscaping buffer area, we are going to revise the pavement area to comply with that. And the enclosure for the trash area and the setback for the pavement and any other requirement we're willing to comply with that. Restriping the parking to comply with the number of vehicles that you agree on. So it's not going to be like a junky stack of used car vehicles or like that. So, once we submit, once you approve it or you're okay with that, once we propose with the actual building permit, we are going to comply with the other concerns we have for the pavement and the exterior lighting.
We'll start with the commission from my left. Commissioner Sullivan, do you have any questions?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Chairman Guzikowski?
This does fall in my district, and I have not had any conversations prior to tonight's meeting with what they're trying to do here. I'm not really very lukewarm on this going to auto leasing, and I don't know that I could support this change. We've had a couple of other auto types of businesses come to Oak Creek or are existing in Oak Creek, and after going by them and watching them, it doesn't feel like it's the right fit for Oak Creek, I feel. So that's just my opinion. So right now, I would not be able to support this.
Yeah, my feedback is I'm not interested in this at all. I mean, we need something there that's going to complement the next door neighbor, our beloved Irv's next door, something that's a little more, got a little more local flavor to it, preferably. Something that's a little more interactive with Oak Creek, considering everything that's going on around it. It just doesn't feel right there. That's my 2 cents. Right now, it's a big no for me from the little we do know.
Commissioner Siebert?
I have a question. The type of service that you're going to provide, is it just leasing a car that you come and pick it up and?
Yeah, this is sale, it's not lease. This is completely sale, but it's gonna be online.
This is going to be sales,
Yeah,
okay.
so you buy the car online, you come and pick it up.
Because it mentions auto leasing.
Probably that was the intent, but it's not. It's going to be
So you're
completely,
going to be
no
selling
leasing,
cars.
just sale only, yeah.
And you will be servicing cars there, right?
Excuse me?
Service, grease, oil, change, tire.
I don't think so. That wasn't in the proposal. So the building as proposed going to be just staff, sales, accounting things. There will be no service on that. The owner is proposing other same business other areas in Milwaukee, and this is where the car is going to be serviced, but not on this site.
A little strange for a dealer not to service cars.
This is, as I said, it's not the typical type that we have.
I understand.
Yeah.
All I'm just saying is when you talk dealership to me, you provide full service for the car. So I kind of question some of that setup that you have there. Okay, that's it.
Commissioner Chandler?
I do have a few questions. So when you identify online, so a customer would buy the product online and then come in to pick up the car. Are you also delivering the car to customers?
I don't think so, no. So the way the car is going to be delivered to the site is by driving. So there'll be no trucks coming in.
Okay. And then, are the plans to also showcase the cars on the site?
Plan is to have the cars parked in the back area completely. So the parking in the front is going to be for the staff.
And then, so what are the activities that occur inside the building? They just take calls for sales, or what else happens
Accounting,
there?
yeah, management.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Are these used cars?
Yes.
So it's a used car lot.
Yes, luxury units, from understanding, between probably 70 to 300,000.
Okay, thank you.
So most everything was touched upon. It doesn't sound like there's going to be walk-in clients. Is that correct?
Just to pick up the cars and finish the sale. Yeah.
So somebody would go online to a website, buy a car. It would just be stored in the back lot. So really, you're just looking, although it's listed as a car dealership, you're looking for a building where you can store the cars in back and have office space. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if someone observes a vehicle and walks in to buy it,
Okay. So based on that, in the proposal, I don't necessarily have a huge issue with it. I know there'd have to be some definite conditions and restrictions if we put in place. Because I know other lots in the area have tended to stray by putting different types of equipment in the parking lots and going above the number of cars that are allowed, things like that. So I personally think it's something that could work, but there'd have to be some tight restrictions laid out on number of cars and what can actually be stored and where. So, any other comments from the commission? Okay, so that's what we have. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so that was 8D. Moving on to 8E, minor land division. Review a certified survey map submitted by End-F3DK LLC, combining the properties at 8751 and 8755 South Howell Avenue. Is that Jack? Okay.
All right, thank you. This is a request to combine two properties on Howell Avenue. It's going to be post-consolidation. It's going to be 1.76 acres. The certified survey map is on the screen for you. On the certified survey map, there's been identified wetlands, but those have been deemed artificial by the DNR. The consolidated parcel will meet all dimensional requirements for the B4 Highway Business District. And with that being said, there's a motion on the screen for the Plan Commission to consider.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here? Do they have anything to? Okay, thank you. So we'll start right away with questions from the commission, starting from my left.
We have nothing. Everything actually has been addressed on their certified survey map from us.
Thank you.
No.
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
And I have no questions. So we'll look for a motion on the certified survey map.
Paper moves that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by ENDF3DK LLC for the properties at 8751 and 8775 South Howell Avenue be approved with the following conditions. 1, that the certified survey map is recorded prior to the submission of permit application. 2, that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections, and conditions required for compliance with the multiple code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call, starting with myself. Alderman Lorik, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8F, which is plan review. Review site building, landscaping, and related plans submitted by ENDF3DK LLC for a phased multi-tenant commercial development on the properties at 8751 and 8755 South Howell Avenue. Jack?
All right, thank you. As you mentioned, this is a phased multi-tenant commercial development. It's in conjunction with the previous agenda item for the CSM. The building meets all requirements of the B4 Highway Business District, and it's a proposal for a 5,000 square foot multi-tenant commercial building located on the northern part of the soon to be consolidated parcel potentially. And only one phase is being proposed currently, and no tenants are announced at this moment. As you can see on the site plan, that is where the phase 1 building is located on the northern portion of the potentially consolidated parcel. Phase 2 would be located directly south. Access to the building comes from South Howell Avenue, and the parking lot will be shared with the property directly north. And as mentioned, this property is only phase 1, with phase 2 not being proposed at this moment. The minimum parking requirements for the 5,000 square foot building are met with 69 spots in total. At this time, there's no information on regarding tenants or hours of operation. As for exterior materials, the building will be primarily made of brick and ashlar stone. That meets 75% minimum of the visible perimeter requirement per code, but it's also being, another exterior material is fiber cement panels, which will require a 3/4 majority approval by the Plan Commission. Additionally, staff has a concern with the east elevation. We would like that to incorporate elements of the west elevation due to its position facing Howell Avenue. There have been issues with tenants blocking windows or otherwise using the street-facing side for outdoor storage in other multi-tenant commercial buildings where the back of the house faces the public street. We'd like to make that aware. As you can see on the screen, here are the proposed elevations. And here are the landscape plans. There's proposed landscape islands and screening the parking lot areas from the right-of-way. As a reminder, plants used to screen parking areas from the right-of-way need to be installed and maintained at a minimum of 3 feet. And as an additional reminder, all ground, building, rooftop mechanicals, utility boxes, and transformers must be screened per code. Staff did have an additional concern with the trash enclosure. There are 2 trash enclosures proposed on the property on the western edge of the property. It's hard to see, but it's marked by the red in the northwest and southwest. Both utilize fiber cement panels, and while it is code that the enclosure is to match building materials of the principal structure, staff requires a masonry product and durable material for the gate, such as steel, due to concerns with flammability. And here are some renderings of the proposed building. that being said, there's a suggested motion for the Plan Commission to consider on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you. And same applicant as the last one, I believe. Do you have anything to present or speak to before questions for this item?
My name is Barry Yan. I'm an architect at Zimmerman Architectural Studios in Milwaukee for this project. We understand the zoning code specifically mentioned that if we use fiber cement material, it has to be approved by board members, more than 75%. So I would like to show this material. This is high quality Nutriha fiber cement panel, 18 inches high, 10 feet long. Looks elegant. It will be supported by a framing system behind. So this is what we propose. And the brick color is white. You see the rendering. This is as an accent to separate two white bricks to further emphasize the L-shaped look. And the percentage of this fiber cement panel for all four elevations is between 16% to 21%. The code requires 25% maximum. That's what we need to.
Thank you. We'll go to the commission with any questions. Commissioner Chandler, we'll start with you.
Okay, I do have a few questions for the applicant. First question.
Name, please. Name and address.
Randy Roth with Endeavor. We're the developer for the project.
The first question in regards to planning staff concerns about the windows on the east elevation. Can you provide some feedback on your plans for that back area?
Well, we're consistent with what the planning staff has recommended, so we accept that as part of the motion.
Okay. And then also, can you provide information in regards to the trash enclosures to utilize masonry material?
We're also fine with that too.
And then for this space, what are the quantity of tenants that will actually, or the space is being designed for?
Sure. So as indicated, this is a two-phase development project. The first phase, which is the building that's in front of you with the elevations, that will be a two-tenant building. And we're working with several national retail brands that you would recognize. So it's going to be retail food or retail services, and it will be no more than two.
And then the same for phase two?
Same for phase two. Yeah, we're looking again along that same national retail brand to provide more national retail brand opportunities for the corridor.
Okay. And then because there will be multiple tenants in this location, there will be customers coming into the property. So can you explain kind of the traffic flow around these buildings or this area?
Sure. Well, there's the common entranceway. So there will be traffic flow right off of the main corridor there. It will work as indicated. What we wanted to do with this building, instead of setting it back, because it'd be so far removed from the corridor, typically retail developers love to have everything set in the back and then the huge parking field out front. Our company works a little bit differently because we do a lot of urban development. So we wanted the building up front, one that's good for the street, two, it also provides better visibility for the retailers. So the parking is in the back, which does mean that the front door entrance faces the parking lot, but that's how it will flow. So there's that common entryway off of the main corridor. And we have worked with our neighbor to the north so that we have a shared access point there. So that's the traffic flow.
Okay. And so is the traffic flow for the customers around the building or?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, so if you're looking at the site plan, someone coming in off of the main corridor there would sort of work their way right and then around the building and park in the parking lot. And then exit back out either the same way or depending if there's traffic coming in from the northern property too.
So the traffic will be two ways?
Two ways, yeah.
For both of those areas? Okay. And then parking for the employees. So then would that be closer to the front since the parking is in the back?
Well, with the retailers that we work with, and we work with a bunch of them, they'll typically have their staff park as far away as possible from the door because they want their customers to be able to have that right of parking closer to the building.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Siebert?
Quick question. I've been looking at the certified survey map, and I see a good portion of your property is in wetlands. How do you plan to handle that situation?
So we did receive a staff report from the DNR. That's artificial wetlands. So we did receive that from the DNR.
Okay. I've seen that property in the past, so it had a lot of water on it.
Yeah, we worked with the DNR on that piece of it.
So you've concurred with the DNR that you can handle the situation.
We concur with the DNR's findings. Yes. Yep.
Okay. I just think you have a challenge there in that piece of property.
We've spent a lot of time on that one too, as it relates to working with the DNR on the artificial designation. So it's not an issue from the DNR's perspective.
Okay. I'm done.
So I guess I'm ignorant to an artificial wetlands. Help me out there. What's that mean?
So, sir,
Hold
you
on,
need to be
you
on
gotta come
microphone
up on
if
the
you're gonna
mic.
speak. To answer your question, Commissioner Aldani, the DNR has identified the wetland that was delineated as being artificial, meaning man-made. It's not a natural occurring wetland. So within the DNR's purview, they have the ability to approve the filling of that wetland because it doesn't serve, in their purposes, any function for habitat or other beneficial functions.
Okay, good. Thank you.
We do need your name and address for the
Robert
record.
Kilby, 8805 South Hall Avenue. My property borders the south side of that property. And I think some of that was due to basements. There was 2 houses on that property at one time, and they took the houses away and left the basements there. So those filled up with water, so it looked like a pond. But they basically were just basements that were filling up because they never basically filled them in. So for that sake. I just had a couple more questions. Can I bring that up now, or should I bring it back later?
You can bring it up now.
Okay, just a couple with the landscaping. In the southeast corner, there's, I think, 3 existing spruce trees, and they've probably been there for 50 years. They're half dead. I would like to see them maybe take those out, perhaps. I see they're still in there, but that just, they're kind of, just kind of falling apart. I think they'll die eventually pretty soon. And then if they wouldn't put anything else too close to, that's my driveway that runs right along their south border there. And in order to get onto Howell Avenue and the sidewalk there, if you put anything in that area, it's dangerous for pedestrians and for people in carts, because coming down the sidewalk, you have a hard time seeing them until you're right on top of them sometimes. So we've tried to keep those trees trimmed up and keep them so that we don't have, because to get out in the Howell, it's 45 miles an hour, and we're kind of a unique situation where our driveway, to speed up to get onto the road there, it takes a little bit of effort. So that's just a couple there. And then the existing vegetation along the backside there, those trees are all overgrowth, brambles, full of garbage and maybe a safety concern. So I'd like to see them maybe take those out as well, just completely clear cut that out of there. I've trimmed it up for years and years to keep so my plow guy can get through my driveway, but they just keep coming back over the driveway a lot of times. So just a couple little things there.
Okay, thank you. I'll let the applicant address those.
Those are all great recommendations, and we'll pursue them.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Thanks for also the basement reference. Appreciate that.
Sorry, kind of lost my train of thought there. Okay, I'm assuming back in a parking lot, those are going to be the trash enclosures. Is that correct? On the corners and on the west side there, for the tenants and then the existing tenant or future tenants.
Right, the northwest and southwest, the ones that are hash marked, those are where the proposed dumpster locations are, and we're consistent with what the staff's recommending as far as how to treat those and build those.
And then I one other thing I missed. What retailers are you working with right now?
We don't have any names specifically, so we're gonna be building it on spec, but we are we don't have anything signed. We're in discussions though with Athletico.
I thought I could get you
Yeah,
this.
so no, I mean, Athletico is one of them, which is a physical therapy, retail service. We've developed projects for them in different locations across the country, so we're in discussions with them. On the second tenant, we don't have any discussions yet going.
That's fine. I was more kidding around just to see if I can.
Oh, no, it's okay. We got their permission to use their name,
Oh,
just so
all
you
right.
know.
Okay.
So-
Fair enough. That's it for me.
Or else I would've been like this.
Well, this falls in my district as well, and all of my questions have been answered, and I think it looks like a good building. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Engineering really has no comments. It seems to be like they're addressing, they address the wetlands through the DNR regulations, stormwater on site. As far as the flow, when you enter, one of our concerns and comments might have been to the south, that width or that necking width for the one-way traffic, which would head north. Make sure that that's signed and very
properly.
visible, if
Yep.
not trying to deter them a little bit more, so we don't get traffic turning left.
Yep.
That's one of our main concerns. Other than that, we do appreciate you working with your partners to the north.
Oh, yeah.
To eliminate some of those driveways and consolidate those access points.
You bet.
Okay. And as far as questions, all my questions have been answered.
Okay.
Just a comment on the building. I think the building looks really nice. I'm not an engineer or design person, but I do like that the building is right up against the road. It does break up a lot of the parking lots you have along Howell there. As far as the fiber cement board, I don't have an issue with it. It seems fairly minor and being used more as an accent piece. So, if nobody else has any questions or concerns, we will take a motion.
Thank you.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plans submitted by NF3DK LLC for the proposed multi-tenant commercial development on the properties at 8751 and 8775 South Howell Avenue to be approved in the following be approved with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that the certified survey map combining the properties is recorded prior to the submission of the building permit applications. 3, that all pedestrian connection be provided between the customer entrances and the sidewalk on Howell Avenue. 4, that interior tenant modifications do not block any glazing approved as part of the architectural plan. 5, that there are no outdoor storage or display of merchandise. 6, that the plans are revised and address all drainage, stormwater, and grading concerns prior to the submission of building permit applications. 7, that all plans are revised to include locations and screening for any mechanical equipment, transformers, and utilities. 8, that all light sources are shielded and directed downward. That the color temperature of the fixtures are limited to a maximum of 3,500 kelvins, and that light source adjacent to the single-family residential areas be shielded on the side of the fixture adjacent to the residential area. 9, that all detailed revised plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call beginning with Alderman Guzekowski.
Guzekowski, aye.
Hold-on-y, aye.
Seifert, aye.
You have a hand raised.
Whoa. Page on the mic, sorry.
Put underground. I think there's a stretch there. Does that mean all of them get put underground? And does that cost come back to me on my property then? Or is that just for that property? Oh, just your property, okay. Okay, perfect. Okay.
The comments made offline were that the developer would be double checking into whether or not the utilities would cross property lines and what the responsibility would be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Continue roll call, please.
Chandler, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Lorik, aye. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 8G. 8G is plan review. Review site, building, landscaping, and related plans submitted by Katie Manacos, Rinka, for the multifamily residential buildings in the Lakeshore Commons traditional neighborhood development, planned unit development at 4005 East Lake Vista Parkway. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is one of two applications that are going to be reviewed tonight for Lakeshore Commons. These are the first development proposals that we are going to be reviewing after we've seen the CSM and the PUD. It is zoned TND PUD, which is the traditional neighborhood development. The proposal is for two buildings. The north building contains 83 units in a 3-story structure. It also includes a leasing office, sports theater, club room, lounge, all interior to the building, and an outdoor patio with pool. The south building contains 115 units in a 4-story configuration with an indoor theater, fitness center, and an outdoor patio. On the screen right now is the proposed site plan showing the north and south buildings and the associated parking with that. We do also have a breakdown of the number of bedrooms in the north and south buildings. You can see that we have a configuration with what are considered junior 1-bedrooms, 1 bedrooms plus den, 1 bedroom traditional, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. So we have a total of 199 units for these two buildings. Parking for the area, we have underground and we have surface parking. So for the north building, the traditional kind of we'll call it just sub-level because it's not traditional underground parking. That it will have 74 parking stalls, and the associated surface parking lot that would serve the building has 65 stalls. The parking for the south building, the non-traditional underground, not underground, parking is 75 and the surface stalls are 76. So with this phase, I should mention that Lakeshore Commons is being developed in phase and kind of in sub-phases within phases, if that's not too confusing. So phase 1 includes the public infrastructure and multiple housing types and associated amenities. We should also mention that there is a master landscape plan requirement for the development. That's going to be submitted in phases. We did receive something, however, it didn't quite meet the requirements of the PUD. So that'll be brought back to the Plan Commission in a separate review item at a later date. And that's part of the reason why we're requiring the landscape plans for this particular development to come back at a later date so that we can ensure that the two meet the requirements for both. Dimensional standards for the two apartment buildings do appear to meet the dimensional standards for the PUD. The requirements for minimum parking within the PUD itself. For multifamily residential buildings with 4 or more units, the requirement is 1.4 stalls per unit. So that would require a total of 279 parking stalls in total. That includes the quasi-underground parking. Total provided is 290 in these plans. There is also a requirement in the PUD for a contingent parking plan should there ever be a need for more parking than what the plans call for. We have not received that yet, but that'll be submitted at a future date. Turning now to the buildings themselves, we have several elevations to go over. Both the buildings will be using the same building materials. It's just a matter of orientation, and so we are going to be going through these. There's a little key up at the corner telling you exactly what part of the building we're going to be going through, and I am going in order. So, number 1, we are looking at the elevation that would be facing the public street. 1 and 2 Basically, everything that's on this key is facing the street, and then one more elevation in the next key. This is facing the public street, which is Breakwater Boulevard. So one of the things that we identified in our staff report is the presentation to the public street and the aesthetic that we're trying to achieve with the PUD is that we present something to the public that is aesthetically pleasing. You have high quality materials that are proposed on the building. The concern is not for the materials necessarily on the building, but for the exposed concrete, and that's for the sub-level parking structure. And the plans call for board form finished concrete foundation. What staff wants to ensure is that the presentation to the public realm does not present as a blank concrete wall. In some areas, the wall is more than 8 feet in height. So it does have that kind of podium effect for the building because this is kind of recessed a little bit under that first floor of the building. But again, we want to make sure that this doesn't read as a blank wall. So either the requirement will be for the maintenance of that wall to incorporate the texture for it, or there needs to be some kind of decorative masonry or some kind of material just so that we maintain that requirement. So that is part of the recommended conditions of approval. Also per the PUD, we do have exposed concrete as being just an accent material. So another reason why we have the board form finish identified on here. Not so much concerned about the finish, but just making sure that the aesthetic maintains that textured appearance. We do also have a recommendation for details for the proposed fence around the pool and patio areas. It does say that it's going to be glass, but just a detail so that we can kind of get an idea of dimensions and materials and things like that. We also have a recommendation for awnings and overhangs on the top stories of the buildings. And the reason that we are recommending that, and we understand that there are some concerns on the part of the developer for that, is every single one of the balconies tends to provide some kind of shelter for the levels below it. But the top level, unless you're part of the recessed portion of the building, and that'll make more sense once we get into the renderings, there's nothing that really provides any kind of relief from either sun or elements. And what we've noticed with additional apartments that do not have any kind of protection area, it reads flat but for the balcony itself, for one. And again, it's very difficult, coming from a former apartment dweller myself, having a patio that is exposed, especially on a west elevation. There's nothing that's blocking the sun coming in, and while that's great during the winter, it is brutal during the summer. So just having some kind of relief from that would be something that we're looking at. Having said that, the proposed building materials include fiber cement. We also have configuration with ribbed metal siding, which is an allowed material per the PUD. We have a wood look fiber cement, the balconies, the windows, the sliding doors, multiple materials palette for the building itself. Just kind of quickly going through the elevations, we incorporate all of the same kind of materials for all of the elevations. So we're getting that kind of depth for the differing materials, as well as the color palettes that are being incorporated here. South building mirrors the north building, except it has an extra story. So the configuration is kind of like it's flipped on its side. But again, we have the same kind of materials, the same kind of design presenting itself to the public realm. The lowest story here, that's actually the interior fitness area. So that presents just kind of a little bit of a different variation for the building, providing that visual difference for residents. And turning now to the renderings, this will give you a better idea of what we're talking about in terms of the layout, how it presents to the public realm, and where those particular items are. So when we were talking about the exposed concrete wall, what we were concerned about is this presentation on this corner here for the north building. So your exterior pool area, that's perfectly fine. That's where the glass kind of fencing area is going to be. Here's your indoor fitness facility attached to building 2. While this presents as what looks like a public street, it's actually a private street that kind of dead ends and curves around on this side. For orientation purposes, what's closest to you on the southern part is the southern building. This is kind of in between the 2 buildings. The pool is attached to the north building. This is that interior parking area where it kind of performs kind of like an alcove almost with the building surrounding this. This is what we were talking about with presentation of that concrete wall to the public realm. In this rendering, it does look very much almost like a brick pattern. That board form concrete does give quite a bit of texture, so that's what we're hoping to maintain. Again, not a blank concrete wall. Similar here, it's a podium effect, and we want to make sure that we have that texture. This rendering that we end on is actually looking in between the 2 buildings. There is something on the plans, and I have to apologize that the plans were not being very cooperative. We had some back and forth trying to get plans that were a little bit more condensed so that our printers liked them. So I apologize that the renderings didn't make it into your packets. They should be at your stations right now for reference. So if there, what I didn't mention were the trash enclosures. There are none. Those trash receptacles will be kept in the quasi-underground parking. They won't be allowed in the front or street yards, but that's something that will be a wheeled out situation, pick up and then wheeled back into the garage. And as far as lighting is concerned, lighting will be for the development and will match the development. It will be screened as required for any other kind of development. And I believe that all of the materials are with the elevations, the percentages are broken down for you so you can have that reference as well. With that, there is a 2-part suggested motion for consideration on the screen, and the consideration is for approval. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to say anything to start with, or just available for questions? It's up to you. Questions? Okay. So we'll start with questions from my left.
I guess not really questions, but Katie, when we're looking through this, out of engineering, the grading plans, we have not yet seen them. We'll include those as soon as possible so our stormwater and our environmentalists can review. I'm not sure if Sue's had a chance or Phil. That's one of our bigger concerns. Obviously, with the intricacies that are going throughout the project. So, other than that, engineering has no other
Chairman Guzikowski?
I think it looks great. It's a nice start. It'll be something different for Lake Vista.
I have no questions.
No questions.
I do have several questions, starting with the concrete walls. Can you provide more feedback on planning staff's concerns?
Sorry, I don't know if we got your name and address for the record.
Katie Menakis with Rinka, 756 North Milwaukee Street, Milwaukee. So this site is, the north side is about a story lower than the south side, which is shown, the buildings look like a story taller from the north. So in order to make the parking requirements and the indoor or covered parking requirements meet for the development, the majority or half of the parking has to be underground. So it's, in order to have the exposure of this, we made sure to keep the board form concrete. The texture is the same as the Lake Vista Park directly to the north. It's also being proposed at the clubhouse to the west, and throughout the site. So it's aesthetically going to tie the whole development together. It also comes at a large cost. So it's in order to keep it in the development, we feel the same about large expanses of concrete unfinished. So the texture will be the same exposure, and we have samples that we can provide also.
But just a quick question, Carrie. Did I understand this correctly? It's not necessarily texture. I thought it was not looking at a blank slate of just concrete.
I think board form concrete, the best way that you can think about it is decorative stamped concrete. So there will be texture to it. The relief needs to be there, so it's not, I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but basically the stamping needs to be deep enough that it can read as something not a blank wall.
So is that the plan?
That is an example of one, not the, we have the same pattern where there's a horizontal relief and then a texture that looks like board form. It's actually more consistent, and we've done it on several other projects throughout the city that has a wood look finish.
Does that fall in alignment, Carrie, with what you're describing? It sounds a little different to me. That's why I'm asking the question.
So the PUD requires that concrete be used in a limited capacity for essentially accent material. This isn't considered an accent, so what it is instead of using another material to stick onto it, they're using the concrete itself as kind of a canvas, if you will, to create that relief in the concrete itself. So theoretically, you wouldn't have any kind of materials kind of like popping off or fading or anything like that. It would always have the grooves in it so that it would always present as this relief kind of material. The other option that we would have, which of course would potentially add cost, would be if you were to require some other material to be adhered to the concrete. You wouldn't have the board form or the texture anymore. But that's what the proposal is trying to avoid, is trying to maintain the same aesthetic by utilizing materials that can just be made decorative in and of themselves. And we have seen board form concrete. In fact, it's at Lake Vista Park.
And it's integral, and also we have landscaping proposed in the majority of areas where screen as much as possible.
Okay.
And the reason that staff is requiring that the board form be part of the condition of approval is because while we do appreciate the landscaping, landscaping can take several years before it actually grows to a height where it does provide some screening. We have seen landscaping fail and not be replaced, and not necessarily with any kind of material, with any product that Katie's worked on, but we have seen some concerning developments where the landscaping just dies and then just goes away, or doesn't actually perform the way you thought it would, doesn't provide the height or the coverage that you thought it would. So it does kind of end up looking a little bit different. So the board form is the texture that we want.
Okay. And then can you also address the concerns about the top level covering?
Sure. So the shape of these buildings, the way that they kind of mirror each other and are crested, they have lots of exposures. Some that have the cover of the apron on the or the eyebrow on the top. Some of them that are sunken in. Some of them that are out. We find that people like a range. There's definitely a concern with overexposure on the west facades. We do have roller shades provided for both bedroom sliding glass doors and windows on all facades. So there's control. We're not, even though we like the double bi-parting windows as shown on the rendering here, where the whole wall kind of opens up, you also have control in that regard as well.
Okay. Then in regards to the pool area, so is the pool open to the public as well as the residents, since there's no fencing or anything around it?
It's a 2-foot concrete base with a 3-foot glass on top. So that some of it is controlled with the grading change and controlled with the landscape surrounding it. This is a pool for this pair of multifamily buildings as well as 2 future other pairs, so a total of 6 buildings throughout the phases. And across the street, there will be another pool for the single-family residents, but this is specifically for multifamily on this site.
And then is that the same for that open space in between? Is that only for the residents or is that for the public?
The open space between the buildings, there's a transition that doesn't currently have any kind of break between what's public and private, but our goal here is to allow for the vantage point. This is kind of the center, the heart of the development, so this allows view corridor for everyone. There is going to be proposed with the infrastructure package a relatively small, simple structure that's essentially just a roof that's going to be for an amphitheater that's going to be a public amenity. So flexible space, but to not block this beautiful view option.
And if you can give me a reminder, for those that may be coming to the area, not necessarily to see the residents, but to kind of walk the areas, is there parking for those people who aren't necessarily residents?
Absolutely. All the public streets have on-street parking, off-street parking, excuse me, and all of the amenities, although the parking lots are private directly adjacent to this, there's right off to the west of this, there's down Breakwater Boulevard, there's street parking. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Questions?
I have no questions. Everything's been answered. No concerns about this. Any other last minute questions, concerns from the commission? If not, we'll look for a motion.
Oldani moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Katie Manakis Rinka for the A9 multifamily residential buildings on the property of 4005 East Lake Vista Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements and conditions of the traditional neighborhood development plan unit development remain in effect. 2, that the landscaping plan is revised and necessary for compliance with PUD requirements in the master landscape design guide and submitted for review before the Plan Commission prior to submission of building permit applications. 3, that a contingent parking plan is provided for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to submission of building permit applications. 4, that all exposed concrete walls incorporate textures, design elements. Blank or non-textured concrete walls are not approved. 5, that all mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, grounding, building, and rooftops shall be screened from view. 6, that all revised plans, site building, landscaping, etc. are submitted in digital format for review by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Hebert seconds.
Roll call, starting with Commissioner Oldani.
Oldani, aye.
Hebert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Guzekowski.
Okay, and that brings us now to 8H, another plan review. Review site building, landscaping, and related plans submitted by Katie Manakis Rinka for the 8-unit townhouse residential buildings in the Lakeshore Commons traditional neighborhood development planned unit development at 4005 East Lake Vista Parkway. Carrie.
Thank you. We're talking about the exact same area. In fact, we're talking about 4 buildings that are going to be on the south and east side of the apartments that we just reviewed. So again, this is in Lakeshore Commons, which is part of the TND PUD. The 8-unit townhomes in 2 buildings are on the south side. They will each have 2-car garages attached per unit. There is one end unit that's split upper and lower, and that's on the corner of each 8-unit building. You'll see the same thing in the 6-unit townhomes. The 2 buildings on the east side, there is a split on the corner for each building, and each one has a 2-car attached garage. So the blue is indicating where the 8 units are, and the orange is indicating where the 6 units are, just for orientation. This is south of the apartments. I did not include both floor plans for the 8-unit buildings. They're exactly the same. It's just that you can just flip them the other way so that they are kind of mirror images of each other. But this is the split unit, upper and lower. And then the rest of these are all two-story units themselves. Same for the 6th unit. This is the split upper and lower, and then 4 units are two-story. The 8-unit buildings are facing south. That's to take advantage of the open space and the views that are in the natural areas that are going to be preserved as part of the development. So the front doors and the orientation, again, is away from the apartments. They're facing south. So we have engineered wood panel, engineered wood vertical board and batten siding. We have asphalt shingles for both of the buildings, break metal panels for accent materials, and engineered wood lap siding. That gives you some kind of depth and transition for the materials as well as the color palettes. That'll be a little bit more apparent once we get to the renderings. Unfortunately, the elevations don't give you quite the depth that you get from the renderings themselves. But all the proposed materials, similar to what's being proposed on the rest of the single-family residential buildings and the multifamily residential buildings that are going to be proposed throughout Lakeshore Commons, they're all proposed materials that are allowed within the PUD themselves. So the garage elevations are actually facing the parking area and the apartments for the south. We like to thank the architect and the developer for adding the little, what they're called, what kind of windows are they on the garages again? They're light kind of windows. Before it kind of just read as a blank wall with all the garage doors, so we do appreciate adding the extra windows on here. But the same kind of materials as on the front, just the wood look panels are actually reserved for the other elevations. So these are the side elevations on the east and west. You can see the variation, the breakup of materials, the breakup of the different levels for the garages and the different levels for each of the units. 6-unit buildings look almost identical, just with 1 unit kind of, or 2 units cut off from the building itself. Same situation, the garages are actually facing the apartments to take advantage of the views to the east. So this gives you a better idea of what the buildings will actually look like. Very much three-dimensional. The single units have the upper and lower, so they have the benefit of having a balcony and a covered patio. The facing south allows for a common pathway to connect the buildings and also connect to the public paths that are going to be throughout the development. There will be lighted pedestrian bollards that kind of signify where that public realm is in relation to the units themselves. There are connecting paths in between the buildings as well. And with the orientation, just kind of picture it east as well for the 6-unit buildings, but they look pretty similar. Lighting for the buildings, on the buildings themselves is kind of sconces. Above the garages, you'll have more of your traditional quasi-security light, although they're a little bit more decorative than that. And then, of course, your bollards. The mailbox situation is a combined mailbox where the visitor parking is, and if I get back to the site plan, it'll give you a better idea. So the visitor parking, there's 10 stalls kind of in between the 2 buildings on the southeast. And the mail pickup area, the kiosk, is kind of right here at the entrance to that parking lot. So orientation south, orientation east, garages facing inward, and then the lights for the development will provide additional security for the parking areas. But with all that in mind, there is a suggested motion in 2 parts for Plan Commission consideration of approval of the project. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add, or would you just like to wait for questions? So we'll start at my right with Commissioner Chandler. Any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Siebert?
No questions.
Donnie?
No questions.
Alderman Guzkowski?
No questions, looks good.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I have none.
My only question, and I don't know if I missed this. The windows on the garage, are they opaque where people cannot see through them?
They can.
Okay. You
Yep.
can see through them?
Yep, we just have them 3, they don't go all the way to the ground, but it's an option for relief.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing else to add, so we'll look for a motion on 8H.
Donnie moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plans submitted by Katie Manakis, Rinka, for 2 8-unit townhomes and 2 6-unit townhomes on the property of 8005 East Lake Vista Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements and conditions of the traditional neighborhood development planned unit development remain in effect. 2, that the landscaping plan is revised as necessary for compliance with the PUD requirements and the master landscape design guide and submitted for review before the Plan Commission prior to the submission of building permit applications. 3, that a contingent parking plan is provided for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to submission of building permit applications. 4, that all mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, grounding, building, and rooftop shall be screened from view. And 5, that all revised plans, site building, landscaping, etc. are submitted in digital format for review by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Seepert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Siepert.
Seepert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Guzekowski.
Goldani, aye.
Thank you. That brings us to our last item, 8I, zoning code adaptation. Consideration of proposed amendments to Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code, revising and recodifying Section 17.0101 through Section 17.1402 to Articles 1 through 10 of the zoning and sign ordinance. Gary.
Thank you, Plan Commissioners, for all of the work that you have put into making this the final product for your consideration. On the screen is the process that we have been through to date, and it's been a lengthy one. We started with a kickoff meeting way back at the end of the comprehensive plan update, which is now been adopted for almost 2 years. So COVID being what it was kind of threw a wrench in all of our outreach efforts, but it also provided us an opportunity to have more lengthy discussions about the code itself and what was going to be changing, what could be better. It just allowed for us to have a much more in-depth discussion about this very important document. The engagement process was lengthy even with that in mind, with COVID being what it was. The kickoff meeting we had with the public provided us a little bit of guidance into some of the considerations that we incorporated into here with regard to wetlands, with regard to setbacks, with regard to building materials, what kinds of residential structures we were going to be allowing, etc. That engagement process continued, and it really continued as the Plan Commission being kind of this steering committee for this process. So all the Plan Commission meetings, if you put them on the screen, there have been at least 8. So we've had quite a bit of discussion with this. Internally, staff have had many, many meetings discussing the draft articles. We've reviewed this many times with our consultants from HLA, and we really do appreciate their input and all the work that they did on providing us with this document. That culminated in the draft code being published to both the city website and the project website hosted by Housie Levine. We did get a few public comments that were considered where we could. We did not get many comments. We specifically asked stakeholders in the business community for direct input by email. So we did get a few comments there. And then the executive summary that was included as part of your packets kind of gives you an overview of what the major changes were. So rather than going over all of that, I would like to ask if there are any final questions or considerations. One of the things that I'd like to point out in the draft that you have, the definition section is still in an update process, so that is still ongoing. We did have a consideration for attached garages. While we did look at it for single family, we didn't look at it for, we didn't actually include that extensive discussion that we had on the attached garages to the single family attached units. So that's another consideration that's currently being drafted if it didn't make it into the draft that's before you. Basically, attached garages for all single family, whether they're detached or attached units, would still follow the same requirements that we discussed at the last meeting. And if I can make that any clearer, just let me know. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that the single family attached is clear enough to people as being distinguished from multifamily. We had a question come up on something completely off topic that made me kind of wonder whether or not we were as clear as we could be with that. So we are adding some definitions in there, some clarifying language that we're coordinating with HLA. Basically, final housekeeping items. If there's anything else that the Plan Commission is concerned about, anything else that the Plan Commission thinks that we might have missed, now would be the appropriate and final time to inform us so that we can make that draft amended to incorporate those comments so that we can present this to the Common Council. If you are not comfortable yet with making that recommendation, you can certainly hold, but there is a suggested motion for approval of the code with those considerations for the in-progress items.
Okay. Thank you. I guess we'll start with any questions. Commissioner Sullivan. Alderman Guzikowski.
I have none.
Hold on.
No, I'm good.
I have a question. It deals with the flood fringe. I don't see anything mentioned about the flood fringe, about how far that you have to build from that flood fringe.
There's no requirement for you to build from the flood fringe other than we do have a wetland setback, and the wetland setback would probably be in excess of what the flood fringe would be. Now, the reason that we don't necessarily have a flood fringe setback is because there are opportunities and there are certain criteria that can be met for people to actually amend the flood fringe. And if we just said that there was a blanket setback, we wouldn't be allowed to amend the flood fringe. So we do have a 1.1 to 1 compensatory storage requirement. That's not changing. So if you, and this is completely different from floodway, so we can make that distinction. But basically, if you are going to be affecting the flood fringe, you have to provide for that storage space that you're losing in that one area at a 1.1 to 1 ratio in another area on that same site. We can't just incorporate a standard setback and still allow that to happen.
That's just a question I had, though, that somebody asked me about it.
It's a good question. It's something that was considered, and it was something that we even thought about with the floodway, but because we do have those amendments that are federal as well as state, it's really difficult to have a very hard and fast rule for that, especially in Wisconsin where you're allowed to, and by our code, allowed to identify flood fringe based on elevations as you see them on site, which is a little bit different from other states that and communities that regulate to the federal minimum. I'm going way off topic here, but but it is a distinction that gets made that way. It's a little bit easier if you regulate to the federal minimum to install or to institute setbacks to flood areas than it is for identifying by elevation. But we do have a setback to wetlands, and that's something new.
Okay, thank you. Answers my question.
Commissioner Chandler.
No question.
Okay. I have no questions. Just a comment. I want to thank Carrie and staff for all the hours and meetings that were put into doing this. I know it's been a very long process. I'm sure the rest of the commission will be happy to send this over to the Common Council. So, if no other last minute concerns, questions, we'll look for a motion on this one.
Harry, do you have any more copies of What you handed over here, because I didn't get one. Oh, I'll take one, thanks.
Okay.
Now, when we pass this, when does this go in effect for the residents of the city?
It has to go before the Common Council, and once the Common Council adopts it, then it goes into effect after, I think there has to be, the ordinance has to be published the next week, and then it becomes effective. But the Common Council has the ultimate approval authority, and we can't have that hearing for at least a few weeks. So there's still an opportunity for the Common Council to provide their input, and they may require changes. So much like the comprehensive plan, it may take a couple of times before the council decides that it's ready for prime time.
What
so to
was the
speak.
Common Council's involvement in this whole thing?
But for the presence on the Plan Commission, I've not had direct comments from the Common Council.
Okay, but I mean, they haven't gone in depth like the planning commission has as far as,
There've been no in-depth presentations such as the Plan Commission has, but the Plan Commission was considered the steering committee for this, which is why there was more held at the Plan Commission than any other level.
okay, not to get too deep in the weeds on procedure, but how is this gonna go through with the amount of time that we've spent on it and just the in-depth and the questions after questions and changes after changes? How's this gonna go?
We have 3 members of the Common Council that can help me with this.
I would say, I think much like the items that the Plan Commission sees and all the prior work that staff puts into it, it'd be similar to Plan Commission putting in all the legwork on this item and sending it to the Common Council.
Usually at every council meeting, whenever a topic comes up on the agenda that we have had any input on from Plan Commission, usually either Alderman Lork or myself or Mayor will interject what we talked about and what was had at the meetings.
Your point is well taken. Your point is very well taken. I think it's a lot more difficult for folks to wrap their head around code than it is to wrap their heads around the comprehensive plan. And I think the more involvement with the comprehensive plan is because they want to make sure that the code, which has to comply with the comprehensive plan, is at a point where they're like, all right, this is exactly what we want. Now, if you're going to make a code that can implement this, go forth. And you're telling me that this is the code that accomplishes that. I think for the most part, the Common Council would agree with Plan Commission and with staff. That doesn't mean that questions can't be answered or asked. It doesn't mean that there might be some confusing parts that we can make clearer. It doesn't mean that there might be some concerns raised at the council level, but hopefully with the amount of times that we've asked for community input and the number of times that we've reviewed this at the Plan Commission, the council will be comfortable with the product that we present for their approval.
You'd be surprised the questions that we get there. They're intelligent questions, and they're truly inquiring about, our thoughts from what we took at this meeting from this body.
It wouldn't surprise me if somebody came up with a question we didn't think of, didn't see this. I mean,
absolutely.
So, yeah, we're counting on you guys, I guess, to bring her home,
I will say that it's not going to be uncommon, and it won't be something that we haven't anticipated about. We probably missed something.
Yeah.
Something's probably not going to work out the way that we had intended, and we're going to have to make an amendment. That's just, you can't just keep going at it for years and years and years, and then, okay, this is the perfect code. There is no such thing.
Understood. That's it.
Okay. Guzikowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that Chapter 17 zoning code of municipal code be amended and as proposed after a public hearing.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call starting with Commissioner Chandler.
Chandler, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Thank you very much for all of the work that you've put into this huge effort. I don't want to understate the fact that this is big. We haven't had an amendment to the zoning code that is this extensive since 1995. This is a very big change. I want to take this opportunity, since we're in announcements and adjournment, to let everybody know that the aldermanic districts are changing. And as such, our reports are going to be changing. And I apologize that we had a bit of a miscommunication about when that was supposed to be implemented. The revised agendas that went out included the aldermanic districts as they are sort of in adoption at this point. Going forward, the individual reports will also note the aldermanic district that is affected by the proposal. If anybody has any questions about what the aldermanic district changes are, they should be available on the website right now. I can also get you a map.
Thank you.
We have one more announcement. Introducing Ashley Kiepczynski, who is our assistant city engineer and will be replacing city engineer Matt Sullivan shortly. So Ashley will be joining us, I believe, for the January 25th meeting. So welcome to Ashley. Thank you very much for your work on the commission as we move forward.
Welcome.
Here? Are you over there? Oh, okay.
If there's no other announcements, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Wait, I missed that. Who made the motion?
Super moves to adjourn a meeting at 8:54.
The whole planning commission seconded.
Okay, got it.
Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Sullivan.
Sullivan, aye.
Lorick, aye. Guzekowski, aye.
Hold on, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank
was
you,
gonna
everybody.
say
Good night.